Whereas most Zelda games introduce brand new bosses who may be reminiscent of previous foes, but not quite them, there are a few bosses who have been lucky enough to survive one of Hyrule's many resets. Those are exactly the ones I want to look at today, by putting their different designs next to one another and trying to see which one is the best. Now, keep in mind that for this we'll obviously need multiple looks, so any boss that only has one will not feature here. I will also not include bosses that I previously covered in my video talking about Zelda enemies, examples of which are the Gleeok, Moldorm and more. With that said, let's get this party rolling. We're gonna start with Zelda 1 on NES, which has several bosses that would reappear in later titles. Arguably the strangest of the group from a list of games perspective is Manhandler. That name may sound like the enforcer of a mafia boss, but is actually a multi-headed carnivorous plant which on the NES was a little undescriptive and oddly enough colored blue. And that wasn't just a result of console limitations, as the official art of the boss is also blue. By the time it would return for Oracle Seasons, the colors would be more like you'd expect, with green vines and a red head, similar to the piranha plant for Mario which the boss is based on. Four Swords would then sort of bring the boss back as Big Manhandler, with a design that's clearly reminiscent but also goes for something slightly different. I personally think it's a little messy. I get that they went with the different colors to fit the different links, but the result is a little all over the place if you ask me. Four Swords Adventures did something similar, but upped the brightness of the colors even more, and simplified the design of the heads, which was definitely a step back. After literal decades of absence, Manhandler would finally get his 3D redesign for Hyrule Warriors, and this one I really like. It's intimidating, yet clean and simple. The more realistic art style of Hyrule Warriors suits a boss which at the end of the day is fairly realistic in design, in the sense that a carnivorous plant is in essence not a fantasy creature. What I didn't have on my bingo card is that Manhandler would also return in Echoes of Wisdom, with a design that is more or less its Hyrule Warriors look translated into the Echoes of Wisdom art style. While I would say it is solid, I think the heads are a little bit too smooth, which is an opinion I also hold regarding Deku Babas in this game. So to conclude, I'd give my vote for best design to Hyrule Warriors. Next up is a bit of a confusing one, being Dodongo. Now, I'm sure that name will make you immediately think of the common enemies seen in Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess and more. But there is also a completely separate boss with the same name that appeared in Zelda 1, Oracle of Seasons and Four Swords Adventures. This boss is based on Triceratops and hasn't changed too much throughout its short-lived career, with the Oracle sprite appearing to be just a higher quality take on the original one. Four Swords Adventures does switch things up a bit, by making the horns pink, the body yellow and the eyes smaller, but I am not an enjoyer of those changes. Even if the Oracle of Seasons sprite is essentially just a dinosaur, I would consider it the best one. Another boss from the original Zelda, one who went on to make reappearances the most, is Gohma. And this is really a great one to look at, because even the design philosophy behind these creatures has changed massively over the years. In the early games like Zelda 1, Link's Awakening and Oracle of Seasons, Gohma is depicted as a crab with pincers in front of its sole eye. Four Swords Adventures removes them, resulting in a creature that's extremely reminiscent of enemies like Tektites. Ocarina of Time goes for a bizarre combination between a crab and a spider, but yet also has only two legs, which makes for a rather strange creature. The Wind Waker takes things in a whole different direction again, bringing the pincers back, but also turning the beast into more of a generic insect with a longer body. And then you have Echoes of Wisdom, where Gohma is really just a spider, which I, as a resident arachnophobe, simply cannot support. Put them all together and I would say my favorite is probably Ocarina of Time, simply because it's such a nightmarish convolution of several creepy crawlies. But really, all the designs of Gohma are pretty strong. And yes, that includes Echoes of Wisdom. We move on from the NES now onto a boss who debuted in A Link to the Past on the SNES, with Argus. Originally they were red squid-like beings with a large eye, a design that was basically reused for A Link Between Worlds, just now in 3D. Despite Triforce Heroes coming not too long after that game, Argus received a pretty heavy redesign in that title, now being blue and less round. I personally prefer this one over the earlier design, it feels more fleshed out. The original is a tad too simple for my liking. Now, a different form, I guess, of Argus also appeared in Four Swords Adventures, one made of stone. But if we're talking simple, this is next level. Straight up just a rock with an eye, that's it. So yeah, this is not competition for the Triforce Heroes variant. Another boss originating from A Link to the Past is Mothula. Now, this has also occasionally been an enemy instead of a boss, but since I didn't cover it in my previous video, it's being included here. So, Mothula has always been a creature with a ton of colors. In A Link to the Past, these were mostly orange and a bluish purple, while the Wind Waker went for a greener design complete with intricate patterns on the wings that look really nice. In between those two, Oracle of Seasons featured a design that's a tad too simplified in order to run with the later ones, something that can also be said about Echoes of Wisdom, which dyes the whole creature pink. Not a bad look for the enemy it is in this game, but it can't weigh up to the more elaborate designs from earlier. Spirit Tracks has arguably the weirdest variant, one that looks almost more like a moth man than an actual moth. I find it a little goofy, it's not my favorite, but I do appreciate it. I'd say Wind Waker beats out A Link to the Past ever so slightly on this one. And while we're on the topic of bosses who are also enemies, let's cover the ChuChu. Yes, this is mostly an enemy, but because I am a moron, I forgot to include it in the first video. And since a big ChuChu appears as a boss in the Minish Cap, it isn't even that out of place either. So, ChuChus originate from Majora's Mask, where, and I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, they look absolutely hideous. I'm sorry, but I hate this. And it makes the immense upgrade they received in the Wind Waker all the more impressive, because this I really like. And it seems like Nintendo agreed, because they brought this version back in both the Minish Cap and Spirit Tracks. Next will be Twilight Princess though, which changed their design drastically. No more eyes, no more character, just a weird goop. Honestly a little unnerving, but still not as bad as Majora's Mask. Skyward Sword goes back into goofy territory again, but can't touch the heights of Wind Waker, and while I think Breath of the Wild's version is actually pretty good, it doesn't manage to beat that one either. Back-to-back wins for the Wind Waker. I want to go for a quick-fire round next, with some bosses who have only appeared in the series twice, and both times didn't exactly throw their design plan out of the window. Like Volvagia, who debuted in Ocarina of Time and has suddenly returned for Echoes of Wisdom. The differences are small here, but I feel like the few details that are different did work a little better in the N64 game. Aside from that, the art style of that game also suits a big threatening dragon more than the diorama look of Echoes of Wisdom. That's definitely an advantage. For Twin Rova, we're once again taking Ocarina of Time, but now compare it to their appearance in the Oracle games. And since this is essentially a full-fledged drawn piece of art and 3D model versus quite old sprite work with limited colors, I don't think it's controversial to say Ocarina of Time's version looks better. Volvagia wasn't the only long-lost boss to suddenly reappear in Echoes of Wisdom, as the same applies to Smog, which originally featured in Oracle of Ages. As such, it's once again a Game Boy sprite versus a modern 3D model, but thanks to the art style of Echoes, it's at least a little closer and more comparable this time around. What is interesting is that previously, the largest form had 2 eyes, whereas on the Switch it only has 1. I personally think the one-eyed version works better here, it adds a bit of character to a pretty simple design, so Echoes of Wisdom wins out. Arguably the smallest difference, to the point I was unsure whether to even feature it in this video, can be found with the Helmarock King, which prominently featured in the Wind Waker and made a reappearance in Four Swords Adventures. The only real difference is the seemingly vanishing of its striking tail, which is not exactly an upgrade I'd say, so my vote goes to the Wind Waker once again. I have 2 more bosses waiting that also appeared in 2 games, although they technically aren't the same creature, but they're close enough that I think they can be compared. First is the Helmasaur King from A Link to the Past versus the Gemasaur King from A Link Between Worlds. These 2 are each other's Hyrule and Lorule variants, and while I do want to give A Link Between Worlds props for this awesome reusing of this concept, design-wise I think the Helmasaur King looks cooler. It's just more raw, more intimidating, which I prefer in this case. In a similar camp we have the two versions of the Talis, both from the Nintendo Switch, with the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom variant, which is really just a giant rock with limbs, and the Echoes of Wisdom incarnation, which is way more ominous, but also hardly the most creative thing ever. I think this is a very tough call, with on one hand a Talis with a pretty goofy design, and on the other one that is cooler, but also not so cool that it can easily win. So my vote goes to the Talis from the open world games, simply because that succeeds better at what it sets out to do. All that really remains now are bosses that are more than just recurring. I'd say they're outright iconic. Like the Skull Kids, which are ironically enough only fought as a boss of sorts in Twilight Princess instead of Majora's Mask. Now, when we look purely at the design of the Skull Kids, I think Twilight Princess's version is honestly better than the original. It's extremely eerie, very uncanny valley, and I love them for it. But if we count Majora's Mask Skull Kid, then that definitely needs to win, because come on, this is iconic stuff right here. Another extremely recognizable design is Dark Link, which has been a thing since A Link to the Past, or arguably even Zelda 2 if you count Link's Shadow. That said, I do think this is a concept that looks significantly better in 3D games compared to top-down ones. Both A Link to the Past and Oracle of Ages' variants don't quite work, and neither does Spirit Tracks. While technically not the same thing, I feel like we can chuck Shadow Link into this as well, which kinda serves as a bridge between these not entirely working sprite-based looks and the peak designs found in Ocarina of Time and especially Twilight Princess. Because nothing beats a very realistic, cool black Link with glowing red eyes. It simply doesn't get better than this if you ask me. Now, before we move on to you-know-who, I want to very quickly make a stop at Skyward Sword, which has 0 reappearing bosses, but does feature several fights with both Girahim and the Imprisoned, where they constantly change appearances. So, just for fun, let's take a look at these as well. Unfortunately, all battles against Girahim are without his cape, which I think is his best look, so I would say the order of designs worst to best is second, first and third. The second battle just feels like a bit of an awkward middle ground, while the first one is cool and I like how cocky he is here, but on the other hand, this is still a downgrade from Girahim's actual cutscene and artwork look. His final form though is a crazy cool design and goes for something completely different altogether, which helps make it stand out more. For the Imprisoned, I would say the best version is the one with only feet. The slug one is very weird, and with everything more than legs, it just looks awkward. Like, the arms are so long and the halo is a bit much, so I prefer the balance between simple but still with some features. And finally, we have the Demon King and his variants left to cover. I think Phantom Ganon is probably the best one to start with. It debuted in Ocarina of Time as a shadowy version of Ganondorf, and while it's still cool, this design has since been bested, I'd say. The variant from the Wind Waker is such a great design that blows the original out of the water, but if you prefer purple over blue, your favorite will probably be Four Swords Adventures. Tears of the Kingdom goes for something completely different, but hits the nail on the head regardless with another banger design. Breath of the Wild is the odd one out though. I'm not a huge fan of the design of the Blight Ganons, which are all considered Phantom Ganons. I just think it looks a little over-designed and doesn't resemble Ganon enough, although that isn't really true of Breath of the Wild's Calamity Ganon, but still. It's not bad or anything, but I would consider it the worst of the crop. We move on to Ganon, without the dwarf, which usually takes on the appearance of a pig, as I'm sure you know. The original few games took that very literally, as Ganon here is basically just a blue pig without even cool armor or a weapon. That would change in A Link to the Past, which would create a design that would effectively be used again for the Oracle games, Four Swords Adventures, A Link Between Worlds and even Echoes of Wisdom. From this crop, I would say my favorite is probably Four Swords Adventures. It's some absolutely top-notch sprite work, super impressive. For more monstrous variants, we need to compare Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess and Breath of the Wild, where I definitely prefer Dark Beast Ganon over Calamity Ganon's final form, which is just a bit too much for me design-wise, similar to the Blight Ganons. The three of these are very close, I like them all, but I'm gonna go for the classic and say Ocarina of Time has the best Beast Ganon of them all. I think it being bipedal helps in securing the win. It helps remind you that while this looks like a beast, it is actually the scheming king we know. And speak of the devil, for the final boss of this video we have Ganondorf. This Gerudo form hails from Ocarina of Time and then reappeared in The Wind Waker, Twilight Princess and Tears of the Kingdom. And I also think we should consider the version from Hyrule Warriors. Now, this might be extremely controversial, but I'm not the biggest fan of Ganondorf's original N64 look. Is it iconic? Yes. But I've always thought he looks a bit too much like a punk and not enough like a king. He's a bit too scrawny for my taste, so this incarnation is definitely not winning for me. The Wind Waker will also miss out, because while I do think it's cool we got to see Ganondorf in this art style and it makes him look super regal and wise, I think this version doesn't look intimidating enough. Now, the 3 that remain definitely do, so it's close calls from here. Since I'm not a huge fan of Ganondorf's hair in Hyrule Warriors, that one misses out. Tears of the Kingdom's variant is jacked like we've never seen before, but because Ganondorf wants to show off his imposing pecs, he lacks a truly badass armor, and as such, the winner of this extremely tight contest for me is Twilight Princess. Could there also be nostalgia at play here? The chance definitely exists, because ever since I can remember this has been my definitive picture of Ganondorf. Which is a little weird, because Twilight Princess wasn't my first game or anything, but for some reason my brain has just linked this design with the name Ganondorf like it hasn't for any other. And so I can only consider it the best of the bunch. But hey, that's just my takes. Surely you disagree with a few of my picks, right? If so, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to stay updated on all my future Zelda content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.